from a civilian worker at Area 51, we're going to hear a lot of insight. We call him Jeff. Since the interview with the man, who we call Jeff, he's passed away, unfortunately, but his information is vital and we need to share this. Here's the interview I had with him.
Well, I won't specifically go into what I've done at the bank. However, I can share that I was a civilian contractor there. I worked for a variety of companies, EG&G Technical Services, and later JT3, which was Joint Test Tactics and Training. My most recent position was for a defense company called Unicorn Aerospace. I was an engineer there as well. I worked on projects requiring top secret Q clearance, and I had access to special programs under the U.S. Department of Defense. I can say I worked at the Nellis testing range for an off and on period of time, meaning that they would hand select us whenever they needed us out there. At the time, we traveled there by the Janet Airlines. My section of plane was 287, which was a specifically plane for engineer and scientist personnel. The plane would land at Groom Base, and after security procedures that we had to go through, we were taking on another plane, which was a Gulfstream C-20G. It was another military private jet. And we traveled 29 miles northwest from Groom Base, which was called Lamb Pond Dry Lake Bed. My projects were primarily testing experimental aircrafts and weapons for the military. The operation at that time was Operation Overhead. It was based on the Project Aquarius, which retired in the mid-90s due to the lack of progress. The projects that were kept was Project Galileo, Project Looking Glass, and Project Sidekick. The number of employees that I was working with at the time was 43. This was including supervisors, scientists, engineers, and security, inner security personnel. The place was very well camouflaged, matched with the desert and the ground textures around it. I would say probably around like 400 feet away, you really can't see them. A total of 5 missile silos and a very large side mountain hangar, probably a quarter mile away from where I was stationed. The doors were located on the rim of the dry bed lake. They were about, this is an estimate, I really don't know, but I would say probably 85 feet across, and they were very large doors. And I pretty much on my own can tell they were old missile silos used in the past. I could pretty much basically understand there was 2 housing compartments on each side of the silo. A propellant terminal and an equipment terminal, which was a standard function for a missile silo. The hangar that was a quarter of a mile away from where I was stationed was on the side of a mountain. It was also camouflaged. I never had access nor have I approached it. However, at night I seen it open and perform testing maneuvers from different variety of crafts that were stationed in there. One fact I do know of, this is what I witnessed on a Wednesday night, was a craft called the TR-6. I only witnessed one flight of it. This craft was very large in scale, triangular shaped, black, had a like a red glow underneath it, pretty much giving off a lot of energy. And this was pretty much ran on Omicron configuration while using an electromagnetic field device. I also was told that it was run on liquid methane, but then again, I really wasn't into that project as well. So.
All right, there's a little static coming up. I'm not sure what you're operating on to speak into, but if you could fix up a little static going on, I'm not sure if we could fix that. But okay, this craft that you saw Wednesday night, can you describe the shape and Was this an alien craft,
Well,
reverse engineer?
that I really don't know. However, what I did see was it was very triangular in shape, very large in scale. I would pretty much probably relate it to our aircraft, Boeing crafts that we have to transport people. That's how large I would say it was. And then again, I said it ran on Omicron configuration, which would perform atmosphere maneuvers or just hovering for testing. I also understood that it ran on electromagnetic field devices, which was mainly run down liquid methane gas to power it.
So this craft would actually take off vertically and with no sound or propulsion sound whatsoever?
Yes, it took off vertically and horizontally. However, horizontally was not primary, its objective. It was pretty much the concerning of vertical maneuvers, pretty much gliding through the atmosphere, so to speak.
What was there a test pilot? Did you get to meet the guy that was flying this craft? What his thoughts on it were, how it performed?
No, as I stated before, where I was stationed was about a quarter mile from it. I only knew that they were storing the crafts, and once in a while they would test the crafts, but I didn't know any of the crew or any of the scientist personnel that were there at the time. It was just something I witnessed from a distance.
All right, let's back it up a little bit. So, before you were involved in this kind of sensitive information that the government wants to keep suppressed, basically we're looking at free energy. But before we get to that, how did you come across? How did you even get this job?
Well, I would not like to answer that right now because I think I would just give away pretty much who I am. I know pretty much somebody's probably listening out there that knows this, so I really don't feel comfortable giving that out. But what I do know is that I spent years working with the U.S. Department of Defense and have special clearance, so that's as far as I'll go with that.
Are there other governments out there around the world that have this kind of energy, or is it pretty much just in the U.S.'s hands? What is the information on that, if you could give any?
That I do not know. Pretty much I'm basically on the information that was basically researched at S4 facility. I don't have any idea if there's any other testings or aliens stored anywhere else. All I could do is just give you new information that I know of. Probably the public doesn't know about what I know, what S has a new base.
All right, let's get some information out of S4 from a man that's been there, Fred. We're going to be calling him Fred, and he basically said the vice president ordered the destruction of this UFO evidence. Before we get to S4, why would a vice president be in charge of destruction of UFO evidence? Why not the commander-in-chief stepping in?
Well, this is because when you have a chain of power, when you have so much power, you don't want to get involved in certain things. This was basically a one-call deal. There were several people, to my understanding, that didn't want this to happen. However, the public was knowing too much and too much fast of the area, too much public eye on the surrounding area. So he had to pretty much destroy everything. However, I am not accurate on that. There could have been one or two crafts that were saved. However, what I was briefed at the time, all the aircrafts were destroyed and the facility itself and moved north.
And where exactly was this briefing? Where did it take place? Okay, let's get to S4. S4 is basically, is this the new location for Area 51? Is this where they're still working on reverse engineering this technology?
Yes, the new location is Lamb Pond Dry Lake Bed. It's 29 miles northwest of Groom Base.
Okay, can you spell that? Can we find this on Google?
Yes, it's LAMB, and it's Pond, POND, Dry Lake Bed. It's part of the Nellis testing range area, They used it for targeting and practicing bombing at the past, and they held missile silos over there for atomic research.
What's the objective? What's Lampon's goal with this technology that they have?
Well, our goal is pretty much taking what we do know and trying to relate it to what we can have here. As I stated before, any technology that we cannot reverse engineer is pretty much useless to us. The crafts that were stationed at S4 used element 115, which it can't be reproduced on this Earth. But, however, when I was briefed, it was produced naturally elsewhere. This was not mentioned to me where it was. However, it was said that it's produced naturally elsewhere and can be used for their crafts, but here we cannot. To my understanding, we did reach element 115, 1 or 2 atoms of it, but it was only seconds, so producing pounds of it will be extremely impossible.
When these craft were recovered, was there any kind of weaponized mechanism aboard the craft?
Yes, that was pretty much dealing with Project Looking Glass. It was pretty much weaponizing any kind of material that we could have on the craft, such as a particle beam accelerator.
Did the craft have its own weapons aboard for protection? Some people claim that that 1947 crash wasn't a crash at all, but they were brought down from our own government. Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, we did have control of an EBE at that time and recovered a craft during the Roswell incident. What happened was the craft was overloaded by electric currents, which was hit by a lightning storm. There was 2 crafts that were involved. One craft was pretty much destroyed completely into pieces. There was no way to even put it together, but basically just researched the material. The other craft was pretty much damaged, however, it was fit to fix. The EBEs, there was about 4 of them that I can remember. They were kept in isolation in New Mexico. Some were put into Los Alamos, the one that was alive as well. And one was traveled to Wright-Patterson's base for Eisenhower to observe during that time.
You know, there's a lot of videos on the internet claiming that they showed an interview with an alien right there. Have you seen any evidence on the internet of any kind of interview with an alien being leaked from Area 51 or S4?
Well, what I know from a fact that they told me at the base was that EBEs don't respond well to Earth's atmospheres or conditions. This is due to tiny bacterial microbes, which are vital for human beings' conditions in order for us to live. However, EBEs' well-beings are harmed by it, causing tiny clones in their lungs. So having a face-to-face conversation with the aliens could do harm to it, because to our knowledge, the aliens pretty much wiped away all bacterial from their ecosystem. Pretty much how I could relate this to is when the Pilgrims came from England, from the old world to the new world, America, and they brought their flus and viruses to the Indians, and they kind of got affected because the Indians were not used to that kind of conditions. This is how much I could pretty much relate to that instance, is that these aliens are very vital to our conditions, to a harmful way to them. So we had to keep them in isolation, pretty much in like biocontainers, if you will, to keep them away from harmful bacterial stuff that's around them. So.
Sure, you know, the worlds, the aliens died of the common cold, basically, is what how the movie went down on this. But this isn't a movie, people. This is real life, and I believe that we've been visited, and there's things that the government's not really telling us about their recovery of this technology and in the alien bodies. So you say that are there any of these aliens still alive today, or have they passed away?
To my understanding, in the area that I was working in, no, they were all deceased. However, I cannot tell if there's any other EBEs elsewhere out there in Utah or any other surrounding areas that I was in. But to my briefing and understanding, that they pretty much all died at S4. We do not carry any alien entities. Only, to my understanding, probably bodies that we had that were frozen and probably used for experiments for biologists or so on. But that was my understanding of that.
Were we ever able to find out exactly where they came from?
I can't really explain that because, like I said, it was not really my general field of that. We were only basically briefed on understanding their conditions and how it was involved in the environment. However, like I said, stated before, I can't really tell where they came from, or I don't believe we really know where they came from, because communication with them was not really relevant at the time.
Sure, it's almost like talking to another species that has no idea what each other's trying to communicate to each other. It's just basically almost impossible. So there's J-Rod's story, and there's some stories out there that one of them, and this guy named Amberch, they built a star jump so J-Rod could go back to his home planet. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, one thing I probably found automatically was fibbing from someone was we do not name the EBEs at all. However, personal employees there could. I could be wrong on that, but communication between the EBEs are very difficult due to the lack of understanding of their gestures or insights on anything. It was pretty much long been established that telepathy was the only form of communication. However, it has been stated that EBE's telepathic communications affect every single person in a different way, giving them mixed thoughts or audio hallucinations, as you will, that will not make sense to us. This was pretty much discovered and solved by hiring personnel for the job. They were not really hired or placed there because of their professional telepathic expertise. However, but for their ability to keep secrets, pretty much. And that was along with medical staff and so forth. These EBTs were pretty much kept secret from everyone, and the communication has been confirmed for clear thoughts processing between the telepathic communicator. However, the government was very paranoid on this, which I could pretty much understand, because the alien could pretty much be giving the telepathic communicator whatever they want to hear instead of what they needed to hear. And this is why that program was shut down in the mid-'90s, because the lack of progress that was happening. It was just not capable for us to understand what they're trying to say. Because the only thing I could relate to this is like trying to explain yourself to a caterpillar. I mean, you got two different highly intelligent species, and you're trying to explain yourself, but it's just not going to work that way in layman terms.
So basically we have no idea what their agenda was, why they're here, nothing. Basically just that, we recovered them, and we're trying to reverse engineer their technology, but no insight whatsoever of what their agenda was?
Well, the only agenda that I know that's considered a fact that was understood between the telepathic communicator was that the EBE's species were pretty much dying out. They needed pretty much so-called data from us in order to genetically reproduce a new hybrid of themselves. Excuse me. So this is pretty much the only stated fact that we have, knowing that S4 did keep aliens, a humanoid and a gray. However, that is all I know about that.
So we have no knowledge of what their homeworld was like, or what was their biological makeup? What was their the texture of their skin. How many fingers did they have? What color, if they had, what color was their blood? Were they cold-blooded, warm-blooded?
Well, due to my professional insight on them, the only insight I ever had from being briefed on this was the ones I seen was pretty much, I would say probably in the early 50s. Had a large head, small black eyes, 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each feet. It was black and white. I could not really see any colors or anything like that, but its organ placement was pretty much one solid organ, where the heart chamber and the lungs and the intestines were all together. Like I said before, I am not a biologist. However, this is what I was observed and briefed on at the time.
There are people that say that when you see an alien for the first time, there have been some deaths involved because of the reaction seeing something so foreign, so alien to your brain that people, passed away from a heart attack just by laying eyes upon these things. What was your reaction when you saw an EBE for the first time?
Well, my action was that I kind of felt a little anger. I kind of felt disgraced that the government would hide such material. And the biggest information that would hit mankind, however, there was a job in Long that I had to do at the time. I had a family to support. I couldn't just go out and say, hey, there's aliens at this place. I had to play along for a while. But that was my true feelings. However, at the time, I could understand that panic could distribute at the time with people that didn't understand what the unknown. That is my only recollection about that. That's how I felt about it.
Sure. I could imagine. You're looking at this, and they're not sharing it with the public, and it would be the biggest discovery to mankind as we would ever know in history. And you're looking at this thing. You can't tell anybody. I bet you that felt pretty ironic at the same time. But did you tell your family about this later on? What were their thoughts?
No, I haven't told anyone. Due to I have received death threats. I have received threats on my family's lives. I believe that if I ever told anybody, it would pretty much harm any close family members or friends of mine. Right now, due to my health conditions, it does not matter, because I believe the public should know what is going on out there and know the truth as well, and not the deceptions that government personnel are giving people for pretty much analyzing people's psychological behaviors on such information. I believe it's very wrong, and people should know the truth out there.
What do you think is the most important thing that we should know that you could tell us?
Well, I pretty much believe that the information I did give you was the key fact. I could give you more on how the crafts operated, if you like, or anything like that. And so
absolutely. What?
Okay.
Let's get some details on this craft, because we're doing this. It's audio, and we're sharing stories. Is there anything? Do you have any? I know this would probably be tricky to ask, but do you have any photos from the scene? Was there any pictures? Anything that you could give us tangible that we could break?
The only information.
Break this open wide open.
The only information I could give you to the public is that there are testing flights that are done every day. Pretty much Monday through Friday are done in early mornings between 2 and 4. if you're out there looking in the sky around the area that I described, you will see aircrafts and lights. Saturday and Sunday are pretty tricky. They usually do it at later night, depending on the statistics, what I was reading, of the volume of traffic going by there. It would be, see if I can remember, between 10 or 2 in the morning would be testing flights as well. That's the only tangible evidence that I could give to the public that will prove my claims there. However, to photos or anything else, I can't. Just being possible.
Sure. Do you recall any high military government official that you could name names? Any politicians ever show up to the base? Any Congress people ever coming around, investigating, asking questions?
Well, this is the thing. When I was working there, we were all named on numbers. We were not given names at all. Numbers would match up with the plane flights that we would take. However, if there was any politicians out there, you would not be able to see them, because when you are outside in any kind of area that the politicians would be in, examinations or so forth, you had to wear these goggles that you can only see 10 feet from you. This was to make sure that you won't be seeing any other projects that were going on around you. Inside, though, were without the goggles.
These goggles?
Yes.
Yes. So you're forced to wear these goggles, so you were only able to see a certain amount of distance. What kind of goggles were these? That's strange.
The only thing I could explain it to layman terms is pretty much goggles you would wear when you're going underneath the water. They were shaped as that way, kind of like welding glasses, per se. They were shadowed and only magnified to where you can only see 10 feet in front of you. As I was stating before, and I don't know if I was stating this before, we had lines that we would follow, and it was suppressed by security personnel. If you were to leave those lines, you would automatically be shot or discontinued from the program. This was very yes, sir.
Okay, wow. So basically you're forced to wear these horse blinds, literally, walk within the line, and then you have armed personnel watching your every move, and if you break a rule, you'd be shot on sight. And you signed up for this.
Well, I wasn't particularly signed up to it, what I was knowing what I was going into. However, like I was stating before, I was hand-selected along with other few people. It was a service that you had to do for the government. You pretty much didn't have any choice unless you had any health problems or any other that sort. But it was pretty much a service that you had to do when you're a civilian contractor for the government.
So you're walking around with these horse blinds on. And I bet you that's kind of disorientating, all walking with these things all day long with a limited perception of view here. So when you were crossing these guys with that were armed, and then you're doing your job as usual, you could only see so far at a certain. You could only see so far. You really couldn't see your surroundings. Then they did this purposely, which is, man, that's pretty cruel and unusual punishment, if you ask me, if you're there to do a job.
Yeah. And I would like to clarify something. I know I stated I seen one of the test flights from a quarter of a mile away from the hangar. That was at a time when we were testing our own aircraft, when the silo doors opened. There was an error, a technical error that I had to fix. This gave me a minute amount of time. At the same time, it was pretty much a lucky coincidence when I saw from a distance at night the hangar door was open with lights in it. So I would just like to clarify that. Because I know the general public's probably going to question that. If I was wearing goggles, how could you see the environment? But that's my statement on that.
Good. I wasn't questioning, but yeah, there's a lot of people that will question this interview, and anybody can make up their own decision whether this is legit information we're getting. I believe it is. What do you got to say to these people that say, this is just a man trying to, come up with this fantastic story? What do you got to say to those guys?
Like I said before, I am not a UFO guy, nor will I ever be. I am not one that goes out and believes whatever is told to the general public. This is stated fact. I'm not here to gain any celebrity appearances or any celebrity listening. This is only just for the public to understand what the government is doing out there and how it changed. Misdeceptions pretty much focused on the Papoose Range. They wanted the people to look over there. They wanted the people to look at Groom Base because they don't want you to know that elsewhere out there in the facility, there's other bases out there that are pretty much functioning more higher testing advanced technology. And it's pretty much a deception. That's all it is. And it's a game, I pretty much believe, that the government is playing on people. I believe it's wrong.
It is. What's their end game? Are we ever going to get any benefit to this technology that we're privy to that's not being shared? Or is it strictly military?
Over the years, we have pretty much equipment that we have is cell phones or microwaves or airplanes equipment or GPS or navigational stealth technology. All that is pretty much arranged from this technology, but slowly leaked out there. I don't deny or approve if we're ever going to know any of the information of the past, just because the people have to understand that the government has lied so much, and they caked on more lies on top of lies on top of lies. It's pretty much hard to get out of it. And they don't want people to trust the government and think that, well, they're bad guys and we're not going to listen to them anymore because they withheld information that could change mankind. I believe, in my personal opinion, the government is just as scared just as much as the general public on not knowing much as we know now. However, the people that I believe that run this show, and I don't know if they're listening or not, I believe they're not doing a very well job. They haven't really picked the people that could do a good job on this. They're not knowing any information on a scientific community-wise. Science must proceed as a community, not be compartmentalized only to two people working on a project or one. It must be diverse in a community for us to grow from it. And that's the only reason that angers me, is that the government suppresses this so much to where there is pretty much no progress. And when there's no progress, they're not going to fund it anymore. And when there's no funds, pretty much no use for it. And that's why I stated before that the government decided to destroy these evidence and just continue on the projects that were proceeding. And that's all I have to say about that. Sorry.
Sure, Frank. The technology's there. You have these guys that are pretty much dealing with it on their own, and there's so many smart people out there, genius, quantum physicists, savants that could take this technology and basically help mankind. What's the most amazing thing that you've seen that you just go, wow, this is something that the world's got to see, the world's got to have?
Pretty much be strictly on Element 115. Just holding it in my hand and seeing the works of it was pretty much amazing. To have something so precious and not from this earth is, to anyone, is an amazing experience. However, as a solid, it is strictly extraterrestrial in element. And like I stated before, it does not naturally occur here. But like I said before, I think that would.
What is this element?
It was a grayish, dull color, rustic. They had it shaped specifically in triangles. That was for the reactor's uses. It would be placed on top of placed inside the top of the reactor. And on the base of the reactor was a particle accelerator. The particle accelerator would accelerate at a high speed, which would deflect it up a small tube aimed directly on the element. This element would pretty much decay, causing radiation emission, and that's which pretty much gives power to the craft. That it produces antimatter, which this antimatter is guided down a tube, which reacts with the gas. When the antimatter and matter react, it's converted to 100% energy efficiency, which I stated before, free energy. It pretty much could power the whole Earth without using coal or water or any kind of windmills. This is pure 100% energy efficient. That is one of the other things that bothered me, that why are we sitting on this technology?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. It should be shared, but then who's going to make any money at that point? But that's not what it's all about. Let me,
exactly.
So this thing, what would be the monetization? What would be the value of this element 15? Let's just say, how much did it weigh when it was in the palm of your hand?
It would weigh about probably half a pound, probably 8 ounces, so to speak.
So what would that bring in? Half a pound of this element? Was there a monetization value? What kind of power? This thing.
It would be.
What kind of power would this
priceless.
produce?
Pretty much 100% efficiency energy. That's how much power, and it's pretty much priceless. I mean, you cannot put a price on something that produced from this Earth, but produced naturally elsewhere. If we were to be able to get this element elsewhere, then I would say it would be nice to use it. But that's what the whole objective of my operation was, to find a way we could go around this and take away element 115 and use the resources on Earth to work along with the extraterrestrial parts. And this is what we're doing today.
So we're trying to build basically a synthetic, basically another kind of element 51, because we can't get it here on Earth. So we're trying to reverse engineer this thing. This thing that weighs a half a pound, this element that you say weighed about half a pound, what kind of power could we harness off?
Powers that could pretty much power the whole Earth. It's not substantial how much power we haven't researched that much, but this power, like I said, I really don't know. All I know is that this power can be reached so much to power the Earth 10 times over. However, it's such a delicate element. Once the craft is powered off, that's it. The element dissipates, and that's 8 ounces gone in, seconds. So.
Wow. This So we're figuring out what makes these things run, and they have to have some kind of massive kind of power if they're going to be jumping from star system to star system. Do you think whatever this craft was, do you think it came from outside our solar system? Some people say that these could be interdimensional beings, maybe possible humans from the future coming back in time, and that's what we're looking at now as our ancestors, these EBEs. What do you make of that?
We don't, like I said, the communication barrier between EBEs are not efficient enough to see where they were or know. However, I could answer that question. We don't really use the amount of energy to power, such as the plane would use thrust to move it. We would need jet fuel. These crafts were basically powered on Omicron configuration and Delta configuration. Delta configuration used space travel, pretty much. It's pretty much warping through the space-time fabric, stretching it, and pretty much like a slingshot, you would be swung to point A to point B. Reason people see why when they shoot like that and their lights stretch like a shooting star is that time is frozen. Time is trying to catch up with the seconds, and that's what Project Looking Glass was about, was researching the milliseconds that were lost. It's very a fascinating technology, these amplifiers.
Wow.
But yeah,
Let's
they
talk
use
about Project.
Yes.
This Project Looking Glass. Well, who dubbed that name? And let's get some more information on this Project Looking Glass. They're trying to capture the milliseconds in between time. Can you explain a little bit more on this?
Yes, Project Looking Glass was another project that was kept pretty much researched milliseconds that were lost, looking for dealing with back in time, pretty much. And this is not stating like we're going back in time to see World War II or Pearl Harbor again. This is pretty much going back in time only in milliseconds. The project would relate to weaponry programs. I didn't have too much information on that because I wasn't specifically stationed in that, but that's what I was told in the briefing.
So is the president aware of what's going on over there at S4?
No. The only thing he's aware of is signing the check to fund these black projects. Anything within the black projects are only need-to-know bases.
What about Dick Cheney? Does he know what's going on?
Like I said, I really don't know. I always was briefed on what I do know on the crafts and the history of the aliens, and what I know what happened to Papoose Range. However, anyone else, I really don't have any answers for that.
What about the security? These guys that are armed, watching every move that you guys are making, ready to, shoot if you're breaking any rules there without any discretion. Were they wearing any kind of badges that you could see? What was their official military rank?
It was kind of ironic. During the day, they would use camouflage clothing. During the night, they would use black clothing. Their faces always were disguised through sunglasses or face masks. You couldn't really see them. I believe there was some kind of branch of military personnel that were able to keep secrets that were hired to protect the secrets within the base. But any further information on that, I really don't know.
All right. So let's just talk about a typical day when you worked in S4. What did you do? You woke up in the morning. Your wife made you breakfast. How did it go from a typical day at work?
Well, like I said, I would. I don't technically live in the state, and that's all as far as I'll go there. When I do have to go out there, like I said, when they handpick us or give us that call, we would have to get on the plane and travel to McCarran Airport. I would get off at McCarran Airport and then go to Janet Airlines. My airplane section was 287, which I already stated was specifically for engineering scientist personnel. After security purposes, after we land at Boom Base, we would be strip searched. Pretty much all the clothing that we had, anything that we brought would be kept in locker systems, and we were weighed as well. After the weighing process, making sure that we're not carrying anything, we were ordered to put different clothing on, kind of like mechanic suits. They were gray in color, very ugly suits, and ordered to go on the next plane the C-20G and fly out 20 miles northwest of Groom Base and land there. After that, again, we would go through another security clearance, which we only had our badges and numbers. We were not reported as names or anything as that to give away any personnel that were working there at the time. Your goggles were pretty much given to you when you were on the plane. When you onboard the plane, you go into another security briefing. You were briefed on what you were going to do that day with your partner. We would go to the missile silos. We would travel by a bus. The missile silos were not too far from the security buildings from there. And I would like to state also that security buildings were camouflaged as well on the rooftops and on the sides. Just from satellite imagery, they don't want to be spotted that there is a facility on that lake if anyone was to disclose this information. But as I was stating before, we arrived from the bus, approach the missile silos, and start immediately working on our project there. So.
And then the day was done. Then what?
Pretty much the exact opposite. We would go back, transfer you back to the security building. They would strip search you again. They would give you another uniform, the same one but different. You would put on the goggles, board the C-20G, go back to Groom Base. Again, you were back in the security building, strip search you, weigh you. If you weighed over a pound, they pretty much sat you in the briefing room, questioned you, searched you, x-rayed you, make sure you weren't hiding anything, stuffing anything anywhere, pretty much.
Yeah, they didn't want you sneaking
out.
But they didn't want you sneaking out with element 15. Let me ask you. So when you got home, your wife asked you, "So how did work go?" What was your? What'd you tell her? What'd you tell her that your job was?
Basically, an engineer. I could not tell her anymore. She knew what I did was for defense contractors. She knew that what I did was not really, I could talk about it for the security of the country. So that's as far as I go there. Anything else I would not disclose to her due to, and I already knew that the NSA was already listening on everyone because that's pretty much the devices that we were making out there is pretty much gathering data and information from the crafts that we're developing for the uses of that. Also for military personnel for warfare. However, I did not disclose anything to her. It was just pretty much, I went to work, I come home a week or two later, and that was it for that.